So let me very quickly shift to a big qualification. So I guess the question that I want to leave with you is, are we facing a permanent crisis of power and authority where the world from now on is going to be characterized by these weak states, poor authority, and that's the foreign policy environment that a country like the United States is going to have to deal with. There's a fellow in Washington, Moises Naim, that wrote a book that's sold very well over the past year called The End of Power, in which he argues that across the board there's been a diffusion of power because of the internet, because of the mobilization of through social media, a lot of other things. So it's not just military organizations, but corporations, labor unions, churches, virtually every institutionalized form of organized society is losing power and authority. So is that the question? Is that what's happening in our world? And therefore, are all of the theories of international relations then going to have to be rewritten to take account of this? Or is this something that's true of the Middle East, parts of Africa, parts of South Asia, but not true of others? And to suggest that maybe it's not so true in other parts of the world, I would just ask you to consider the situation going on in East Asia right now. East Asia is really different from the Middle East and Africa and South Asia in a number of ways, but I would say the most important way is that this is a region that has historically been characterized by very strong coherent states. And in fact, in the case of China, that Chinese state dates back to 221 BC, when China was first unified in the Qin dynasty. And for the next 2,300 years, they have had a tradition of strong centralized government. This is true of Japan. This is true of both of the Koreas. This is true of Taiwan and other countries in that East Asian cultural sphere. So what's been going on in East Asia over the last couple of years? I actually think that this is as dangerous a part of the world as the Middle East, because now you've got rising nationalism in China, Japan, and Korea, and it's playing off, these nationalisms are playing off one another. They're manifested right now in conflicts over various little stupid islands in the Western Pacific. Now, people with an economics background say, oh, they're worried about natural resources that are underneath the island. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. The resources are not the issue. The issue is really national identity, national self-assertion. China, like Germany after 1871, is big, powerful, and they're saying people aren't recognizing the fact that we're big and powerful, and they ought to. Japan and the United States haven't woken up to the fact that the power balance has shifted. And so I think that you can argue that in East Asia, because it is a part of the world that has strong, coherent states, that actually a lot of the old realist theories may not be so bad. And in fact, many people have suggested the situation of China now is very similar to that of Germany before 1914, when you had a big rising, powerful commercial power that was upsetting the balance of power in Europe. Britain and France allied with each other to block that expansion, and World War I was the result. And I think that in many respects, you could see a kind of analogous situation arising in East Asia today. So let me just end there. So I think this story is actually a very complicated one, that the nature of power has shifted in very important ways in a really important and troubled and complex part of the world. And our security strategy and our diplomacy, I haven't even gotten in, I didn't have time to get into the whole question of can we build democracy and coherent states? And the short answer to that is it's pretty hard, and we haven't had a great record at that. Witness both Afghanistan and Iraq after 10 years of American investment in these projects. But that's not the whole world, and in other parts of the world, these more traditional forms of power, I think, will continue to prevail.